Today, what we're going to do is get directly into what is it that makes fights on the higher levels, big fights, that is, what does it take to make those things happen? And we don't want to keep you guys in the dark. What we're going to do is we're going to uncover the light and we're going to make it very clear in boxing so you won't be delusional anymore and you can really get your place where it really can make a big difference. And those of you who want to be an impact in the sport, we're going to make sure that you have all the ammunition. So the things that we're going to cover today is what actually makes a big fight happen. We're going to actually have a couple of minutes where we discuss this one-on-one with an individual who's actually a pro fighter and wants to really catapult into the higher rankings. So what's going to happen is you're going to get the information to give you the right step-by-step process. And from that point on, you won't be unclear anymore. This is how you get to the higher levels, having the information and understanding the data. We will hear from Eddie Hearns today and also Marcos V from Fight Hub. So it's going to be a very action-packed show that's going to give you real clarity today, right here on Let's Make It Happen with Eric Bradley Live. Until then, first thing we're going to do is get into the topic at hand. For those of you who've never watched this show, we thank you for taking the time. But boy, you're late to the dance. My name is Eric A. Bradley, coach, that is, 4 decades in the sport of boxing. The journey was formidable and it's informative, and every ounce of it we're going to be able to share with you so that you're just not talking to some talking head, someone who has experience. I'm third generation in. I've been doing it myself for educational purposes for 2 generations. So you guys are generation 5, and we're passing the torch to you with the information that'll change the way that you approach moving your athletes in the direction so that you can be one of those guys who reach the highest levels based on what you know. So before I get going with that, this is going to be a deep conversation. So really get your pen and pads out. That's my suggestion to all of you who are really in the sport and you want to know the knowledge. Get your pads out. And we like to thank those who keep the lights on for us, because without the lights, the mics, the cameras, there's no show. Jab Juice Consultants, the sponsor of this show, and Jab Juice also sponsors the Fight World. So any of you guys out there, when you're in that place where you don't know exactly how it's going to happen, Jab Juice points you in the right direction. The consulting is what we need. We need the information. And once we get the information will guide us to the promised land. That's Jab Juice Consulting Agency for the combat world, helping them not only with direction, but building their personal brands with content and learning giving them the opportunity to learn the right things to help them further along their careers and make the right choices so that they won't be one of those who are out there just trying to figure it out by chance. So with that being said, let's get ready to get into it. And what we're going to do right now is I'm going to give all of you an opportunity. I want you to check in and let me know where it is that you're watching from today, because we're going to get into this conversation. As you see right here, there's a conversation that I wanted to really make sense to you. How does a big fight happen? Well, I'm going to let you hear directly from Eddie Hearn when he's speaking about when you got guys like Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez. The conversation is really, really not when, but how much. And let me show you why. Let me know exactly where you're watching from as you checking this out. But here he is.
You heard the interview. He asked for 150, 200 million to fight Benavidez. A lot of people don't like that rhetoric. A lot of people have said,
yeah, I understand. Yeah,
Canelo's pricing himself out of the fight. There's no way that he can get that much money for a fight with Benavidez.
You have to understand that when you've achieved as much as Saul's achieved, rhetoric is not your biggest concern. Like, he actually doesn't care what people think. Like, he's established himself as a legend of the sport. He's fought everybody. And I don't know how serious he was about the 150 or 200, but why not? Give him your number. You know, we live in a crazy world. Someone might pay it. I don't know. But one thing I know about Saul is he ain't afraid of anyone. He has no problem fighting David Benavidez. I think he's not over the moon about how much Benavidez would rehydrate in the ring, because he'd probably have 15 pounds on Canelo. But he has no problem fighting him. But he also understands that it's a huge fight. And if it's a huge fight, you better pull your money out, because that's the way Saul works these days, you know? And he's got legacy. He's got belts. He's got everything. Now's about the fights that he wants and the money you're prepared to pay.
Okay. Because what happens is, what Eddie was trying to explain is that an athlete, when you reach a certain level, certain fights aren't even interesting to you. And it's not really important to Saul Canelo Alvarez, because he's actually built his audience. He's actually built his brand. He doesn't need a legacy fight anymore. The fight brings him no value. The only thing it does is it makes him fight a tough fight with a guy who actually isn't really in his weight dimensionally wise. Like that's why he made it. If there's going to be a fight, it's going to be clauses and things of that nature in that fight, because he's dimensionally, Benavidez is a big guy, heavy, really not the typical 168er, because he's come down from a massive weight loss in his career, and he's fighting where he wants to fight right now. But Canelo's he's not the kind of person that actually needs that fight to cement anything. He's making $100 million. He's valued at, somewhere over nearly a billion he's earned. He's earning just like Mayweather was. I mean, he had a $360 million contract with DAZN after the Mayweather fight. And so what's happening is his market value, he's on his last run. So his last run is all about capitalizing for his great grandkids. So you have to think about, what is it that Benavidez can do. And that's what the next show is going to be about. And I want you guys to really stay tuned, that I've been in the sport for so long, and the people that were my coaches had been in the sport for so long, but they weren't just coaches. They were businessmen in the sport of boxing, which is kind of why I've adopted that mentality, that mindset. And David Benavidez is a really good fighter. Let it be known. And thing isn't about fighting great fighters now. Thing is about who can make the bag to secure my great grandkids' legacy in the financial realm. And so that entails what decisions make sense. Do you go out and fight the toughest fighter for the least amount of money? That doesn't serve his purpose. So before a lot of people get into the mentality that someone like Canelo is afraid, he just doesn't understand anything else in the world but fighting. He's a gladiator. A gladiator fights whatever is in front of them. They have no discrepancy, and they don't have fear of another man. They overcome fear by fighting. So if you were scared of someone, you fight them so you won't be scared of them. That makes sense? Not the opposite. It's not like a regular guy in the street who's not a gladiator. He's a real gladiator. You don't fight men toe to toe. If you guys got an opportunity to see what sparring actually look like, then you'd understand, oh, why would he be scared of an opponent when he's facing guys 30, 40 pounds bigger than him in sparring, head to head, hardcore wars? It doesn't make sense. So rethink everything, and don't put a label on individuals who box, because they're doing something that not a lot of people on the planet will do, let alone if they were forced to do it. So with that being said, we want to make sure that you guys are connected. And we had a question from a young man who really was curious about how does he move itself through the rankings of boxing. So with this next section, our biggest hurdle is going to be, what am I here doing? Right? We're trying to make sure that you guys have information. And the most important information for you to have right now is make sure you let me know where is it that you're watching from. Because what I'm going to do is we are picking 3 people. I said it last week as well, who will be actually coming in as we're sponsoring. And so I'm going to run down the list of the people that we actually picked, but we're going to include those who've signed up for our program over the weekend. Friday, we read off 10. Thursday, we read off 10. Today, we're going to read off 10 more members. Now, we have a class that's probably 5 times the size of a class that's supposed to be, but we're helping people with their boxing career, whether that's training or if it's those guys focusing on doing boxing as a career. And so learning it the right way allows us to say, this is the problem that we fix. We don't want you out here with a bunch of questions and you can't get them answered, and you need to understand how important programming is. So with that being said, here's a question from one of our guys in the conversation, because we have this place and we discuss real boxing things. And as we consult, this is part of what we do. We consult with you. We let people know. And my question to this young man, you guys will get to hear a professional fighter right now. And this call was recent, very recent. And I want to know what you guys think when you consider what is it in boxing that you think about the real line items in boxing. And just listen to this conversation, and you can give your thoughts and feel free to chat. We're picking new people so we can sponsor you. All right. So comments are very welcome. Comments are very welcome. So whatever it is that you're thinking about, or if you have a question, be sure to drop it.
End up getting a draw, which probably shouldn't have been a draw. But without proper preparation, I didn't get the result that I needed. I was a little irritated, but I had to understand where I was, and certain things just not gonna go that way. So
Because you seem like you know what you want to do. And in your biggest vision, what do you see? How high do you see yourself getting?
honestly, I just want a belt, either WBA or WBC. That's all I want. I've never touched a belt before. I always wanted a belt. My only goal in life.
How do you think a belt happens?
It's a long road. 1, 2, you got to put those fights in. That you got to put a lot of hard work in.
No. Everybody works hard.
Okay.
It's not that. Tell me how does a belt happen?
For the most part, based off my understanding, I understand that you have to have those right fights at the right times.
How do you get the right fights at the right time?
So the first you start off with being the A side, you pay for your opponents. Once you get to like 10 fights
How do you become the A side?
with the A side, you have to put your own money up for the most part. You have to pay for your opponent. Also, you have to have a good not amateur experience, but you have to have some type of background that these promoters they can build off of.
So you think you pay for your opponents?
Unless I got like the misunderstanding. For the most part, when you first
All right. So that's a lot to unpack. And so, but for the typical boxing fan who becomes a fighter, that's exactly what they think. The first question does, how does a title happen? You want a title, and I gotta table this conversation. Right. So be patient with me, because I'm not gonna rush something like this, because for one, boxing is serious. Number two, if you do this game, this sport, and you are misinformed, you are going to get, not only you're going to lose, but you're going to get hurt seriously. seriously hurt. So excuse me for not rushing. I don't really care about time when it comes down to explaining this, because the reason why I got into this sport was to first be one of the people that's responsible for helping people figure this thing out, because I know that the powers that be operate differently than those who are not from the sport. So his real approach to, and I'm not chopping this guy down, he gave me the best answers that he could get, which is formidable. Just to have the courage to tell someone what you feel, and especially someone that you want help from. And that's a vulnerable conversation. Therefore, I make sure that I blur the faces out, because I don't want to share the conversation that you have with me unless you want, you know, it to be known. And there was no, you know, situation where I said, well, I'm gonna blur your face out. I just think you guys need to hear what goes on. And this segment is called Fly on the Wall segment. And that means you get to be a fly on the wall to conversations that I've had with world-class people, people who are in the industry, people who are in the sanctioning bodies, people who are in the Hall of Fame, people who are active, people who are not, people who are out here doing interviews. I'm bringing the sport of boxing to you so that you truly understand how this game works, and it's not what your perception is. So let's unpack his perception. And if anyone else out here knows how you get a title, feel free to drop it down in the comment box. Let me put this comment here, because there could be a question. I have to make sure I read it, because I don't need to put anything that doesn't pertain to what we're talking about. Let me see. Yes, it's important. There are a lot of misconceptions in getting title fights. Yes, it is. And you don't get title fights. I'm going to explain how you get title fights. I'm not going to explain how you get title fights, because that's not the problem. The problem is understand what your perception is. It's not what it is. Then the next question, I just have to be clear that that's not how you learn. In consulting, you paint everything out, but you have to get the things directly in front of the person that's black and white. His perception of getting a title fight. Let me take it back here.
So
Because you seem like you know what you
just want a belt, either WBA or WBC. That's all I want. I've never touched a belt before. I always wanted a belt. My only goal in life.
How do you think a belt happens?
It's a long road. One, two. You got to put those fights in. That you got to put a lot of hard work in.
No. All right. So his response is, you got to put a lot of hard work in. Now let's unpack that. Who isn't working hard if you're boxing, and who isn't working hard if you're in combat sports? So who's not working hard? So when a person has that floor to clear things up and they can't really nail it, then that's a problem in the sport, because that leaves the person just in a place where they're just flailing out answers. And the answers are important, that you are sharing with people about what is it that it takes to actually get to the top. You know what happens is you're not asking questions. You're just giving answers, instead of saying, how do I get to the top? How do I get a title shot? Because I let you know last week with Mauricio Suleiman, how do you actually get not only a opportunity to fight and have your eyes, be watched by the best and the best, but reach the top 10, the top 25. There's a process in which that has to happen. What I notice is that people just want their own perception. So the second question was, let's table this. Just know that you have to ask questions. You can't just assume that you know. This is a sport. industry. It's not, you're not at the park playing pickup basketball. There are so many different legalities and angles and anchors to this sport. Managers, PR people, publicists. It's so many different moving pieces, lawyers. It's so much more than what we assume. Let's hear the second part. Everybody works hard.
Okay.
It's not that. Tell me how does a belt happen?
For the most part, based off my understanding, I understand that you have to have those right fights at the right times.
How do you get the right fights at the right? You have to have the right fights at the right time. So more or less, once again, here we are kind of at an answer that says, I truly don't understand what steps actually happen. And let me read a comment. It's a team sport, different specialties under one roof. And so, people like this, these are people who are under our banner, so they know a lot of different things. But as we table that conversation, it's like you got to have particular fights. It's so much more to it. You can't just put a Band-Aid over a shotgun wound. And that's what's happening. People are hearing a bunch of some of the things that people are hearing out on YouTube. They really think that's all of it. But you're seeing the outcome of the work that has been put in for decades, not years, but decades. And you're taking away the perception of that, which that's leaving you in a place where you're misinformed. So how do you think, if there's literally, I know there's 1 million fighters, why are there only 8 champions, 10 champions across the entire sport? Legitimate championships, not these popcorn belts. Why? And it's just as many people who are misinformed about the manner in which you move a fighter. There are guys who got guys with titles that don't understand how to move their fighter. Their fighters running into very, very serious situations, like over the weekend. And poor Dave, someone did an interview with him, and he's enjoying his life. Training camp's hard, and I know where he is. He's here in Miami. I just saw him 2 weeks ago. It's tough. And you're young. You have to have an outlet until you get so disciplined in life. You cover that, because I told you there are only 3 reasons why fighters lose fight. And number 2 is lifestyle. Remember that. There are only 3 reasons why fighters lose fights. And it'll all come to surface when losses happen. You can reflect back and say, that's exactly what I was doing. And that's what we don't want you guys to experience. If I give you answers now, it won't help you. So that's why I'm not answering questions like the questions that I'm asking this young man. I'm not answering them because it doesn't help you. You have to get the education, or someone has to be on staff with the education. That's what helps you. Seeing answers, a person reading something gives them 5% of comprehension, less than 10%. Seeing something is less than 17%. When you see something, you only comprehend it 17%. It's when you read, hear, go through practicals, and embody it. that you understand it clearly. It takes all of those principles, hearing, seeing, actual practical training for it, muscle memory development. And I'm not talking about boxing skills. I'm talking about understanding business of boxing or of any sort. So me telling you, it's nothing that's going to stick. Just like the last 10 videos that you watch, you don't remember them because you've been scrolling and all you're doing is taking the OCD side of your brain, the ADD, that attention deficit disorder, and you're just adding to it, adding to it. Get off the feed. You go to the next 100 videos and you've done it. 100 videos you've watched. You have no room for comprehension or application. And the only thing that we do is we give you application. So the last part of this conversation, and then I'm going to let you guys hear Eddie Hearn again on how does these things actually happen. So listen to this.
So the first you start off with being the A side, you pay for your opponents. Once you get to like 10 fights.
How do you become the A side?
With the A side. So you have to put your own money up for the most part. You have to pay for your opponent. Also, you have to have a good not amateur experience, but you have to have some type of background that these promoters they can build off of.
So you think you pay for your opponents?
Unless I got like the misunderstanding.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Very good. Thank you. You're very correct and good trainer. Dirty. You're welcome, brother. Thanks. So his perception is that you pay for, well, you have to become the A side. Y'all, that's a fixation. That's not real. That A side stuff, y'all got that stuff from, those are sound bites you got from Floyd Mayweather. It's not a real thing. How did Jake Paul come in and become an A side? It has nothing to do with all of that other stuff, those perceptions. You have to know how to manage your life. And for the most part, you can see these are the misconceptions in the sport. This is what's happening and this is where we are. But how do we get to the next phase? As a person who consults professionals every single day, I deliver people from, my team does, they deliver. I got a team of 11 people currently that work directly with our people. Our job is to give them answers and something that they can apply. So they have to have an application. The application is what makes everything work. Not me showing you videos, not me telling you stuff. Application, when it's something that is actionable and formidable. Okay, so don't think it's you. Don't blame yourself for not knowing. Don't blame yourself for not having all the answers. We don't know. We're human beings. We're animals. We are mammals on this planet that are figuring it out every single day. Why would you blame yourself for something that you truly shouldn't understand? We're primal beings. You know, we should be coming out of caves, but no, people got clever, but that does not take away the other instinct that we possess, which is primal. Okay. You don't see tigers walking through the forest with briefcases and sunglasses on using an iPhone. No, because we're not sophisticated that way. So you should not blame yourself, but you should say, how do I get application? How do I get to a place where I can apply all of the knowledge? Because listening to it doesn't help me. It doesn't help you at all. You know how much it helps you? Zero. It helps you zero. Just like those past 50 videos you scroll by. Tell me the last 3 videos you watch and tell me what you took away from them. If somebody types it into their comment boxes, the past 3 videos that you watch that you liked, What are they, and what did you take away from them, and how are you going to apply it into your life now, and how far it's going to get you by watching those videos? Let me see. Let me give you 10 more seconds. And why there's not going to be any answers is because the only time you can process it is while you're learning it. And if you're not in a class setting somewhere that you can actually learn, then that's why you won't learn it. So it's just a bunch of waste of time. You're killing time. There are two types of people, those who manage time and those who kill time. Those who manage time are wealthy. Those who kill time are confused consistently, and they're typically all over the place. Lots of anxiety and a lot of confusion, and their answers sound similar to this great young man who serves and who has served our country. Like I said, this is not me spamming this young man. This is what I'm doing and addressing something that is a problem out here in our sport, our industry. This is really happening. This is what people think. They think you just the A side. They take these sound bites from guys who are at the highest levels and they use them in their world, and it's not the same world. You're so far from getting to that point unless you understand how to build a personal brand and expand and get millions of people that follow you, like Jake Paul did, KSI did, Logan Paul did. Logan Paul was a part of the biggest wrestling event over the weekend ever. The numbers when you're on stage with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, John Cena, The Undertaker, just legend after legend. I mean, you name it. Big brands is all about big moves, clarity, and application. Those guys are they're moving through life with an application, but you don't see them applying that every single day. All you see is the outcome. Snoop Dogg, he's living with application, and he's just not showing up at the television station saying, "Hey, put me on," even though his brand is that permeating that he could. But he's applied himself. He's proven his business model. He is a brand, and he understands value in the market space. He knows where to stick his nose in. He knows what not to stick his nose in. And so that's what we don't want you guys to be out here thinking that you're at that level, and your process looks like his process, but you don't see his process. You don't see his process. His process is so much more detailed than you could ever imagine. I wouldn't have written 30 books on boxing and business if it wasn't that difficult. We got a guide that gives you 52 weeks of training regimens that you have to have every single day. You have a program. And the reason why I did that is because you didn't need more skills. You need application. You need something that's applicable to apply to the styles and the skills that you're actually doing now. So therefore, we created this. It's 52 weeks. You don't need, look, that problem that would never go away will go away like that the minute people bought it. So we'd like to thank everybody, all of the newbies who came in through that door over the weekend. And so we'd like to send a special shout out to Jonathan Burnell, Ashley Reynolds, Patrick Harris, Rob Veraz Ruse, cool name, Raphael St. James, Michael Griffin, Curtis Davis, Hutifa Waleed, and Primo Mendez. Special shouts. Welcome, guys. And thanks for taking the time to join our circle. It's a beautiful thing to get new people all the time. When you're doing something right, people buy into you. When you're doing something right and it can take them to another level, you start doing big deals. And when you start doing big deals and people start winning big and start accomplishing major things, you start to get to a place where you're in newspapers and magazines. And so shout out Miami covered, me, little old me, because we're making moves and we're creating dents in the industry. We're helping people because you have a great talent. The only thing you need now is you just need application. This 52 weeks training guide, that's application. Then when you get to the upper echelons of boxing, you need to understand the business. You or somebody on your team that needs to understand business. So deals can get done. Deals are awesome. Having the ability to help a person. I writing this guide, it was real work. But the amount of people that have taken a pivot in their life trajectory has changed because they have application in an area. They solve the problem. And we make things so much more difficult because there's that one thing that I said we all are suffering from. We're primal. When we start realizing that we can get out of our own way by taking one step at a time and growing over the course of time, that's when you start getting further in life. And that's when you start hitting those switches, start hitting those value points, start getting to a place where you're starting to accomplish things that you set out to accomplish. That's what's the most important thing. Keep it very simple and keep the most important thing the most important thing. All right. So, with that being said, it's all about understanding what happens to make a deal happen. Well, that's exactly what you need to do. A lot of people don't understand how does a deal get done and why is it that certain fighters have so much control because they've made the right moves. They've applied the right thing. They have application. This 52 weeks skill guide, that's application. You want to know what it looks like? Those individuals buy this guide. They go into our portal with the videos, because the videos, it's hard to, you'd be impossible to do this because it's a bunch of things here that you've never seen before, but with the right video. So each thing is tied to a video. I'm going to read down. What's today? I'll read down what is day 4. Day 4. Give me 1 second. This will only take 20 seconds. So be patient or keep scrolling. You start off with your footwork, all 4 of these drills, and then you have to work on using inside combinations. So there's a bevy of inside combinations. So you don't have to think about what you're going to do tomorrow. Some of you are going to go to the gym, you're not going to know what you got to do. Then you go to the next thing. You're going to learn how to throw combinations, particularly when you're tied up by your opposition. That's a big deal. Knowing these things really matter. Then you're going to make sure you execute your punch logistics prior to this. This is after your footwork drills. And everything is broken down round by round. Every single day, you got a whole new bevy of things to execute so that you can become a great athlete and do this thing at a high level. And when you're doing it at a high level, it becomes your keys to success. Now, application is something that removes the problem of thinking about what you need to do and giving you the reps, the formula, and the visuals to do it. Now, what I'm going to break down now is we're going to go back through what we were talking about. This is the quick takes. First, you got to realize how to get to the top. If you don't know how to get to the top, you have to understand one thing. Who can get you there? Who can give you the answers that you need? That's number one. Well, how do you get to a position where you get the fights you want? Once again, you're going to need the person to point out the right fights, to manage your career in a way that you could see what needs to be done in order to improve and get the kind of fights and resistance that you need. Therefore, that's when the sanctioning bodies start paying closer attention to you, because you're fighting the right fighters and you're doing the right things to move your career. And the third thing is, how exactly do I get to a place where I understand this last and final thing?
When you first start out, they pretty much pay for your opponent so you can get, a feel of the ring, get understand.
How do you get to a place where you become the A side? Well, it's making sure you understand each one of these other facets. It's by getting the right people who understand the game, learning what they know, and having application. Application. Skills. It's a simple thing. Have your skills, have application, have your career trajectory. It takes a different trajectory when you got application. So I want you guys to use this information the right way and listen to my guy Eddie Hearn break down with Marcos V about this. And then
For this next fight, because you have a relationship with His Excellency out there in Saudi Arabia, to make that fight in Saudi Arabia, given that they do have deep pockets over there, they could pay that amount for that fight.
I think they have deep pockets, but they're smart people. Like, their fight has to work for them. It's not just a blank check that can be written at any moment. There is a plan to what's happening in Saudi Arabia. And, I think we've seen before, one thing they won't stand for is people taking advantage of the fact that they do have funds available for major sports events. So if the fight makes sense and it's a fight that His Excellency likes, I'm sure he'd be prepared to do it, but only on his terms and the numbers that make sense for Saudi Arabia. And, they want to stage the biggest fights in the world, and Benavidez against Canelo is a huge fight.
Have you spoken to him about taking Canelo over there or staging a fight with Canelo over there?
Yeah. I mean, and I believe Canelo's spoken to him personally as well. I think His Excellency wants to bring the biggest names in the sport to the kingdom, and Canelo is one of them.
so much has to be done. There's so many layers, and I can't wait to unpack it, but I will definitely teach you next time. Conversations will be about making it very clear on how you actually get to a place where these people, these individuals, you can reach and get those fights. What is the thing? I know it. I know exactly how to get a big fight. I know exactly how to get the fight that you actually need and the fight that you want, because you need to move through the rankings, but you want that big, super duper fight that'll secure your family, that will buy you that big home, that will get you the car and vehicle that you want to get for your wife and your daughters and your sons during graduation. Those kind of fights that change your life forever. Like Shane Mosley was up here and saying, hey, after the De La Hoya fight, we changed zip codes. That's the kind of fight you want. And so I know and understand how to do it only because my coaches, my mentors, that's what they were doing. They were great at business. Emmanuel Stewart told us directly, y'all the most business savvy guys that I've met in boxing. That's not hard to do because people are really about the one and done. They don't understand business, so they try to just manipulate their way through the game with fighting, and that's not what boxing is about. This is a business. It's an industry. There's so many corners and so many crevices in it, and if you don't understand it, you will just be a lost rabbit in a maze. And that's where we come in. We consult and we make sure that you have a map for that maze, and then that you're applying it on a weekly basis. And so that's what it is. So make sure you leave a comment down here so that we can choose 3 people that we will sponsor to allow into the school as an affiliate and work your way up through as an ambassador, but get access to all of the most profile boxing teachings and lessons and understanding of projecting out here in the market as a real business mind and a real juggernaut in the sport of boxing. I think that's all we got. Like I said once before, make sure you stay tuned and be sure to give us a like if you have information. If any of this information benefits you, make sure you like. That allows the algorithm to detect that you enjoy this kind of content, and it'll find you the next time. And if you haven't already followed us, make sure you follow us, because we're going to give you more of this every single week, every single time. Nothing but the truth. That's our focus. And continue to follow as we take you to the next journey. And Master Boxing says thanks again. And once again, special shouts out to those of you who are in the combat world. Remember, if you're trying to steer your combat world directly on point and get yourself to the place where your brand is recognized, your personal identity, jabjuice.com, Jab Juice Consultants. That's where your answers reside. That's who can take what you're doing and put it into that era that you wanted it to be in, which is the success era. So make sure you continue to follow, and I'll see you guys soon in the winner circle. Peace out.